The scent of oil and metal filings clung stubbornly to my clothes as I pulled into my driveway. After a 12-hour shift at the shop, all I wanted was to check on my pride and joy. My 1967 Camaro SS. 18 months of sweat had turned that machine from a corroded shell into a masterpiece. With a click of the remote, my garage door rumbled upward, revealing chrome that gleamed like lightning and paint so rich you could drown in it. Then my evening detonated. Someone call the cops. He's stealing my car. It was Brenda, the HOA president, storming across the lawn with her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was sharp enough to slice glass. Yes, dispatch. A black man is robbing a vehicle in front of me right now. Hurry. Sirens already howled in the distance. She'd called before even speaking to me. And there I stood, keys in hand, at my own house, about to be arrested for driving my own car. What would you do if your neighbor weaponized the police in your own driveway? Drop a flag emoji in the comments. Let's see how far this madness reaches. I'm Marcus, third-generation mechanic. My grandfather passed the craft to my dad, who passed it to me. For 6 decades, our family name has kept engines running in this town. When my marriage crumbled last year, my wife suddenly decided grease under fingernails wasn't her type. I scraped together what I could and bought a small home in Willowbrook Estates. A neat HOA neighborhood, where lawns matched, mailboxes matched, and apparently, every resident was expected to match too. That Camaro wasn't a midlife whim. I picked her up at an estate auction, nothing but rust and despair, the kind most people would trade for scrap money. But under the rot, I saw muscle waiting to roar again. I paid $3,200 cash and claimed her. For the next year and a half, every weekend was resurrection duty. I rebuilt the 350 small block, restored the turbo 400 transmission, and redid the suspension. The paint alone consumed 4 months of sanding, priming, and wet sanding until the hugger orange finish gleamed like a warning flare. Every bolt, gasket, and hour of labor was documented for insurance. Receipts lived in a binder thicker than an old phone book. My Saturdays smelled of primer and coffee gone cold on the workbench. Losing myself in that project was like meditation. And then there was Brenda Wilson. The walking, talking embodiment of HOA fever dreams. She'd moved in 5 years earlier, instantly proclaiming herself ruler of Willowbrook. A realtor with a spotless white BMW, manicured nails, gravity-defying blonde highlights, and a frozen smile that could curdle milk. She'd been HOA president for 3 straight years, unopposed, since no one else wanted the job. Her specialty? Using the bylaws like weapons. Trash bins out 12 minutes too long. Citation. Fence posts a fraction off measurement. Warning. Mailbox font not approved. Violation. She once marched over with a ruler, declaring my grass exceeded the maximum 2.5 inches. Just upholding standards, she said, grinning like a mannequin. 2 weeks before the garage showdown, she stormed over while I was bleeding brake lines. The sound of my impact wrench offended her. Excuse me, but the noise ordinance says no power tools after 6, she sniffed. I wiped my hands on a rag and stayed calm. Actually, city code allows hobby work until 9. I can show you. Her smile iced over. We'll see about that. This kind of industrial activity hurts property values. She said, industrial, like I was running a drug lab instead of restoring history. The disaster began during one of Brenda's Saturday pool parties, a weekly gathering of neighborhood wives with mimosas in hand. From my garage I could hear the fake laughter. Then her voice pierced through, that's my new Camaro. Bought it from a dealer in Phoenix. 45 grand, but worth every penny. They're shipping it next week. My socket wrench clattered to the floor. She was holding up her phone, showing off pictures of a hugger orange Camaro identical to mine, pretending she owned it. Guests fawned over her purchase while I stood there slack-jawed. Later that afternoon, I rolled my baby out for a quick run to pick up brake fluid. The engine thundered through the neighborhood, deep and primal, echoing off the houses. When I returned, Brenda was in her driveway, arms folded tight, face flushed red, glaring at my car with predator intensity. I gave her a polite nod. She didn't respond, just kept staring. That night, I bet she scrolled the internet for hours, feeding her own fantasy until she convinced herself I had somehow stolen her dream. By dawn, my annoying neighbor had transformed into a dangerous one. So when 2 squad cars roared up my driveway, lights flashing, I knew Saturday was shot to hell. 4 cops spilled out like it was a bank robbery. Officer Rodriguez, a 20-year veteran with kind eyes, approached calmly. His partner, Officer Morgan, was younger and built like a linebacker. "Evening, sir," Rodriguez said. "We got a call about a stolen vehicle here." The absurdity hit like a hammer. "A stolen car? Officer, this is my house, my garage, my car. That's like saying I stole my own fridge." And then Brenda appeared like a ghost, clutching her phone in white knuckles. "That's him. That's the thief. I just bought that Camaro yesterday for $45,000. I forced myself to stay calm. My dad always said, documentation beats desperation. I pulled up my phone, scrolling through my obsessive restoration photos. Rust bucket. Rolling chassis. Painted perfection. Rodriguez studied them, eyebrows climbing. "That's some serious craftsmanship," he murmured. "You do this for a living?" I nodded. "Family trade. My grandfather would have whacked me with a wrench if I'd done sloppy work." Meanwhile, Brenda scrambled, shoving printed pictures at the officers. They were clearly dealer photos downloaded minutes earlier. No VIN, no paperwork. Just glossy shots of any random Camaro. "Ma'am, do you have a bill of sale? A receipt? Wire transfer?" Chen, another officer, asked. Brenda flushed crimson. "Paperwork takes time for classics. It's processing." Her excuses unraveled while I pulled out the binder, the holy grail of ownership, complete with DMV registration and insurance. The VIN matched perfectly. Rodriguez's flashlight scanned the DMV paperwork, every number and date lining up like puzzle pieces. The registration bore my name, this address, the VIN etched on my engine block. I flipped another sleeve, insurance documents, complete with progress photos required for coverage. Chen scribbled notes, unimpressed by Brenda's frantic attempts at improvisation. "She forged everything." Brenda shrieked, veins popping. "He's some identity thief, I'm sure of it." That was my cue to play my ace. From the back of my binder, I pulled a yellow legal sheet, edges worn, ink faded. The original estate sale receipt, scrawled in the shaky handwriting of a 93-year-old widow. $3,200 cash. Buyer assumes responsibility. Signed by Eleanor Hutchinson, phone number included. Rodriguez handled the document with care, as if it were treasure. "This is the original bill of sale," he said softly. I nodded. "Her late husband's project car. She asked me to bring it back once it was restored." Silence blanketed the street so thick I could hear sprinklers hissing 3 houses down. Chen snapped his notebook closed with a final thud. "Ma'am, his ownership is verified. What you've provided are internet printouts." Rodriguez's voice dropped into the stern register cops save for public meltdowns. "Ma'am, knowingly filing a false police report is a misdemeanor in this state. People go to jail for it." The color drained from Brenda's face like paint washed away in a storm. She muttered something about a mix-up, her eyes cold and calculating even as she backed down. I knew then, this wasn't the end. This was round 1. Monday morning, my mailbox bit me with bad news, an official HOA violation notice. Unauthorized commercial vehicle storage. Apparently, my work van, a plain Ford Transit with Rodriguez Family Auto painted on the side, wasn't welcome. Fine, $200. Deadline, 48 hours. And at the bottom, Brenda's flourish of a signature, like she'd signed my death warrant. Through the kitchen window, I watched her jog by, her route oddly looping past my house again and again, 17 passes in one morning. Each time, her eyes darted toward my van like it was desecrating holy ground. That's when I remembered a lesson from my divorce lawyer. HOA covenants are legally binding contracts, and contracts always leave trails. Paper doesn't lie. On lunch break, I hit the county courthouse, combing through dusty files until I struck gold. My van was purchased in 2017, 3 years before Willowbrook passed its commercial vehicle restrictions in 2020. That meant I was grandfathered in. Legally untouchable. Brenda could huff all she wanted, but she had no authority. I drafted a rebuttal complete with receipts and hand-delivered it to the HOA office. The receptionist's eyes widened as she read my response. "Oh dear," she whispered, like she was watching a train wreck. "Mrs. Wilson isn't going to like this." No kidding. By Wednesday, my mailbox became her personal complaint factory. Oil stains on my driveway, false, I power wash monthly. Odors from my garage, apparently WD-40 was offensive now. Noise violations during legal hours. She was carpet bombing me with paperwork, hoping something would stick. That's when I invested in peace of mind, for high-def security cameras with cloud backup, night vision sharp enough to catch a mosquito landing. The first recordings were almost comedic, Brenda patrolling our fence line, snapping photos, wielding a collapsible yardstick like a weapon. She'd turned neighbor surveillance into her personal Olympic sport. Then came the nuclear play, an emergency board meeting notice shoved in my mailbox at 4 p.m. The meeting was at 7. Barely legal notice, designed to prevent me from preparing. I showed up expecting a kangaroo court, only to find 3 women around a folding table. Brenda, her timid sidekick Clara, and Janet, a human bobblehead who nodded at everything Brenda said. "Where's the rest of the board?" I asked, taking a seat. Brenda's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "This is sufficient. Tonight we're enacting an immediate ban on all automotive repair activities. Previous violations carry a $500 fine." She leaned back, smug. I unlocked my phone and opened the bylaws I'd studied that afternoon. "Interesting theory," I said. "But Section 4.3 requires 7 days' notice for any vote. Section 4.7 requires a quorum of 5 board members. I see 3. Which gives this meeting the legal power of a knitting club." Clara flushed red. "Well, this is just preliminary." I smirked. Preliminary or not, Section 2.9 says invalid meetings create personal liability for board members. Brenda's composure cracked like glass under heat. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Bringing your kind and your activities into our neighborhood." Her words dripped venom, but I stayed calm. "I think I'm a homeowner who reads contracts before signing them." Novel, I know. That night, neighbor Tom knocked on my door, looking sheepish. "Most of us think she's lost it," he admitted. "Want to grab coffee tomorrow? We should talk." Friday morning, the doorbell rang at 7:15 sharp. On my porch stood Dave Martinez from City Code Enforcement, clipboard in hand, eyes weary from too many neighborhood feuds. "Got a complaint about unlicensed auto repair," he sighed. I waved him into my garage, sunlight spilling over pegboard walls where every tool had its place. The smell of polish and fresh oil hung in the air. Dave stepped inside, his eyebrows shooting up. "Jesus, this is cleaner than the shop where I get my truck serviced." He ran a finger across my spotless workbench. "Not a speck of dust." "Family mechanic business," I explained. "This is hobby only, weekends, no customers." He scribbled in his notes, shaking his head. Anonymous tip claimed illegal business. "I see 0 evidence." "You're good." On his way out, Dave paused with one foot on his truck's running board. Off the record, this neighborhood. Same caller, 4 times this month. Different complaints, same voice. Lady needs a new hobby. He drove off, leaving me equal parts relieved and irritated. Brenda's war wasn't just about rules, it was obsession. Her next strike came by certified mail, a formal complaint to my insurance company. She'd contacted Progressive directly, claiming my garage activities posed a fire hazard. Immediate inspection or policy cancellation, the letter said. My heart sank, bureaucratic hell incoming. But when Bill, my agent, showed up, the visit went differently. Bill spent the first 10 minutes bent over my Camaro's engine bay, admiring like it was artwork. You kidding? This setup's safer than most commercial garages. Half these suburban homes are fire traps with propane tanks and tangled extension cords. He signed the report with a grin. Then he dropped the hammer. Brenda would receive a cease and desist letter warning her against filing fraudulent claims. But Brenda wasn't done. She found the modern battlefield, social media. Overnight, the Willowbrook Neighborhood Watch Facebook group popped up, her digital kingdom. The inaugural post featured photos of my van and garage, laced with sweetly toxic captions, just trying to preserve our beautiful community standards. Some activities belong in industrial zones. Tom slid his phone across the cafe table, showing me screenshots. 23 people joined in the first hour. It's like watching a dumpster fire. The comments were split, some neighbors defended me, sharing their own Brenda horror stories. Others lurked, silent but watching. Brenda started deleting the critical ones. And that, more than anything, lit the fuse. Nothing enrages neighbors like censorship. By Sunday, the group had fractured into factions, arguing about free speech, property values, and Brenda's heavy hand. And then the harassment turned physical. I woke one morning to roofing nails scattered across my driveway like deadly confetti. My security cameras caught a hooded figure at 2 a.m., moving nervously. The quick, brisk stride was unmistakable, Brenda. Officer Morgan took my police report seriously, photographing every nail. Classic intimidation, he said. Document everything. These patterns simmer, then explode into arrests. His tone was weary but firm. I filed the footage, my nerves tightening. Brenda wasn't just annoying anymore, she was dangerous. Later, while reviewing recordings, I saw more. Brenda pacing the property line with her phone, taking endless photos, measuring angles with military precision. This wasn't random. She was conducting reconnaissance. Planning something bigger. Then came the letter. Plain white printer paper, slid into my mailbox. Your kind doesn't belong here. Leave voluntarily or face consequences. No name, no address, but the watermark on the paper matched Brenda's HOA notices exactly. My lawyer instincts from the divorce kicked in, I knew enough to recognize matching signatures. Detective Martinez, assigned to my growing case, studied the letter. Anonymous threats like this qualify as hate crimes, state and federal. We're building a strong case. Her calm tone reassured me, but inside, I felt the chill of escalation. Brenda was pushing herself into criminal territory. That evening, Tom's Coffee Club grew. 6 households gathered, each carrying their own Brenda battle scars. Mike the lawyer had been fined over mailbox fonts. Sarah the accountant was cited for unapproved flowers. Group action gets results, Tom said, stirring sugar like he was plotting a revolution. The coalition was forming. Friday afternoon, I buried myself in courthouse archives again. The clerk wheezed as she slid me a box of records, like she'd been doing the same job since Carter's presidency. 3 hours later, surrounded by dusty stacks, I uncovered Brenda's secret. HOA funds were being siphoned. Thousands funneled into consulting, landscaping, legal services, all tied to Brenda's home address. The numbers made my hands tremble. $78,000 looted from the HOA in 2 years. And the scams were laughably obvious. Brenda's Best Gardens had never completed a single project. Wilson and Associates conveniently appeared during her divorce proceedings. She'd turned HOA dues into her personal piggy bank. But the kicker? Cross-referencing complaint dates with home sales, I saw the real scheme. Brenda targeted families, hounded them with citations until they sold below market value, then used her realtor license to broker the sales for investors. 3 households gone in a year. And the cruelest twist? Her own house was in foreclosure, $23,000 unpaid dues, taxes, debts piling up. She was a cornered predator, using harassment as survival. I photocopied every incriminating page, my hands shaking as the machine spat out evidence. $17 in copy fees, best money I'd ever spent. As I walked back to my truck, folder stuffed with proof, I called Tom. "You sitting down?" Because what I just found changes everything. The war had officially shifted from defense to offense. By Saturday, Tom's garage looked like a command center. The air smelled of coffee, motor oil, and impending justice. Around a folding table sat our unlikely team, ordinary neighbors turned into a resistance unit. Tom had assembled the Avengers of Suburbia. Sarah, the forensic accountant, spread Brenda's financials across the table like a crime scene investigator. "This isn't subtle theft," she muttered. "This is robbery with paperwork." Mike, the semi-retired corporate lawyer, combed through documents with the eagerness of a predator. Prosecutors dream of trails this clean. Linda, the high school teacher, pinned color-coded timelines on poster board, mapping harassment to property sales with the precision of a scientist. "Look at the pattern," she explained. "Target, escalate, force a sale, bring in investors." Carlos, the contractor, whistled low. "And she's using HOA money to fund her divorce? That's not cunning, it's stupid." Over 2 caffeine-fueled hours, our battle plan took shape. Operation Documentation Fortress, Carlos would turn our houses into surveillance strongholds. Cameras, motion sensors, cloud storage. If she sneezes near your mailbox, we'll have it in 4K. Operation Legal Annihilation, Mike laid out statutes, explaining fiduciary duties Brenda had trampled. Every fraudulent check carried personal liability. Linda created standardized incident report forms, thorough enough to survive nuclear fallout. Dates, times, photos, witnesses, airtight. Sarah was practically glowing, already planning a full audit. "We'll make this bulletproof." The timing aligned perfectly, Brenda's foreclosure hearing in 3 weeks, audit results in 2, HOA elections in 4. A demolition schedule dressed up as a calendar. Tom, Sarah, and Mike would run for the open board seats, flipping control from Brenda's puppets to our coalition. And the media? Sarah had already reached out to Channel 7's investigative reporter, Janet Mills, who smelled Emmy Gold in HOA corruption. "She's drooling to cover this," Sarah said with a grin. Mike discovered the knockout punch. Brenda's realtor license renewal was due in 6 weeks, requiring disclosure of criminal convictions. Fraud meant permanent revocation. "Career obliteration," Mike said, grinning like he'd found a winning lottery ticket. It was more than justice, it was checkmate. As the team dispersed, Tom clapped my shoulder. 2 months ago, you were the quiet mechanic. Now you're leading a neighborhood rebellion." I looked at the walls of evidence and plans. He was right. Sometimes bullies pick the wrong target. "Brenda's about to learn that," I said. Monday morning, her panic echoed across the neighborhood. I watched from my kitchen window as Brenda paced her driveway, phone glued to her ear, gesturing wildly. "Emergency board meeting tonight," she barked. Clara shuffled over reluctantly, Janet trailing behind, but both wore the look of people losing faith in their leader. By noon, every mailbox carried Brenda's desperate letter, a $500 emergency assessment for legal defense against outside agitators. She accused me of threatening to sue the HOA. What she didn't know, Tom had been at her little parking lot meeting, recording every frantic word. "We need to control the narrative," her voice crackled on playback. "They're digging into finances. I don't know what they know, but if this gets out, I'm finished." Clara's hesitant response was cut off by Brenda's snarl, "I won't go down alone." Mike grinned like a shark. Courtroom gold. Wednesday night, she escalated into vandalism. My cameras caught her at 2:47 a.m., dressed like a wannabe ninja in yoga pants and a hoodie. She planted oil containers behind my garage, slashed tires, sprayed graffiti, all under my motion-activated floodlight. Crystal clear video, face, license plate, everything. The code inspector arrived the next morning. He spotted the staged oil jugs instantly, Home Depot stickers still attached. "Ma'am," he said dryly, "false environmental claims are federal offenses." Brenda's excuse collapsed on the spot. Another nail in her coffin. Her social media unraveling was even more spectacular. The Facebook group became her therapy stage, filled with ranting posts about outside agitators ruining the neighborhood. At 2 a.m. Friday, she wrote, "When certain elements move in, good people must act to protect property values." We screenshotted it instantly. She wasn't just reckless, she was self-destructing in public. By Saturday, Brenda's desperation reached new lows. Carlos was installing cameras at Linda's house when Brenda marched over, waving an envelope thick with cash. "I know Marcus is paying you to lie. Here's $2,000, just stop helping him." Carlos, bless his blunt honesty, kept screwing in the camera while recording everything on his phone. "Ma'am, I'm just helping neighbors protect their homes. Maybe you should hire a lawyer." Her voice rose an octave. "I don't need lawyers, I need control. He's turned everyone against me with his lies." Carlos caught every word, her frustration dripping like acid. Another recorded nail hammered into her legal coffin. Sunday evening, she tried her favorite tactic again, a false police report. Claimed I'd threatened her with a weapon in my driveway. The responding officers found me elbow deep in a neighbor's transmission, with 3 witnesses right there. Officer Morgan looked done. "Ma'am, this is your 4th false report in 2 weeks. You're pushing into chargeable territory." Monday morning, Sarah emailed the preliminary audit results, encrypted, secure. The numbers were worse than we'd guessed. Brenda hadn't skimmed $78,000. She'd stolen nearly $96,000 across 30 months. Inflated invoices, phantom services, kickback schemes. Not just broke, she was a professional thief running out of neighbors to exploit. Tuesday night brought her most disastrous move yet. At 2:33 a.m., Brenda broke into the HOA office using a stolen master key. Security cameras captured every bumbling second. She fed documents into the shredder like she was making confetti, panic etched across her face. The silent alarm summoned Rodriguez, who arrived to find her elbow deep in shredded evidence. "Step away from the computer, hands where I can see them," he ordered. Brenda's response: "You don't understand. They're destroying everything I built. This was my community." The footage showed it all: sweat, desperation, collapse. She was cuffed on the spot, booked for evidence tampering and fraud. Bail, $25,000. For Brenda, might as well have been $25 million. She spent 3 nights in county jail, probably her first taste of life without a manager to complain to. But even in lockup, she couldn't stop scheming. Clara visited, carrying a recorder in her purse. "Clara, please," Brenda begged through the glass. "There's money hidden in my garage. $50,000 cash. Help me disappear. We can start over." When Clara played us the recording, Mike whistled. "That's theft, conspiracy, and obstruction, all confessed on tape. She's gift-wrapping the prosecution. Every desperate move she made tied the noose tighter." Thursday evening, the community center overflowed for an emergency neighborhood meeting. 43 households showed up, furious and united. The smell of burnt coffee mixed with righteous anger. Sarah presented the final audit results. Brenda hadn't stolen $78,000, she'd siphoned $112,000 over 3 years. Gasps, curses, and disbelief rippled through the crowd. Tom spoke like a preacher. Every family here has been robbed, an average of $2,800 apiece. Our so-called HOA president has been lining her pockets while weaponizing rules against us. The vote of no confidence was unanimous. Brenda was stripped of her title, and the demand for prosecution was thunderous. Friday morning, the media storm hit. Channel 7 rolled up with cameras, followed by every local station sniffing scandal. Brenda's mugshot, her document-shredding footage, it all hit the airwaves under the headline, HOA president arrested in $112,000 fraud scheme. Janet Mills, the reporter, interviewed me on camera. This isn't about revenge, I said carefully. It's about accountability. No one should abuse power to terrorize their neighbors. The clip exploded online, our story trending nationwide within hours. Homeowners everywhere shared their own HOA nightmares, turning our fight into a rallying cry. Brenda's real estate career imploded overnight. Her brokerage suspended her license, past clients filed complaints, and her reputation became radioactive. Her home went to foreclosure auction, selling $70,000 under market value. Justice had a sense of humor. But Brenda wasn't done embarrassing herself. At 3 a.m. Saturday, she went live on Facebook, mascara streaking down her cheeks. I was just trying to protect the community, she wailed. Sometimes leaders must make tough choices. Comments shredded her, neighbors unloading years of grievances in public. The video vanished, but screenshots live forever. The sentencing came weeks later, and the courthouse overflowed. Residents packed every seat, anticipation buzzing. Brenda sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, fake blonde hair limp, looking like a balloon left in the sun. Her public defender spun excuses, divorce stress, mental health, finances. But when the judge spoke, the room fell silent. Judge Hernandez leaned forward, eyes locked on Brenda. In 3 decades on this bench, I've rarely seen such blatant abuse of trust combined with harassment and intimidation. She listed Brenda's crimes: embezzlement, racial targeting, false police reports, destruction of evidence. Brenda sat slumped, her crocodile tears falling flat. The court sentences you to 4 years in state prison, restitution of $112,000 plus costs, and 5 years supervised probation after release. The gavel cracked like thunder. The room erupted, 40 households applauding, a wave of satisfaction that felt deeper than any sporting victory. Brenda finally turned her head as deputies led her away in shackles. No remorse. No apology. Just venom, glaring at the neighbors who dared to stand up to her. But this wasn't her community anymore, it was ours. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. One shoved a mic toward me. Mr. Rodriguez, what advice would you give other homeowners fighting HOA abuse? I thought of the months of fear, the hours of documentation, the bond we'd forged as neighbors. Document everything. Build community. Truth wins. 6 words that would soon echo across the country. The quote went viral, shared by HOA reform groups nationwide. Suddenly, our little neighborhood battle was a national headline. But standing there in the sunlight, surrounded by neighbors who'd become family, I realized the real victory wasn't just defeating Brenda, it was discovering what community could be when people fought together. 6 months later, Willowbrook Estates was unrecognizable. Where tension once lingered like smog, now you heard laughter, smelled barbecue, saw kids playing without fear. The HOA board, Tom as president, Sarah as treasurer, Mike handling legal affairs, actually practiced transparency. Meetings were announced, records posted online, and citations required photographic evidence. The old restricted area behind the clubhouse was transformed into a community garden. Linda organized planting schedules with military precision. Neighbors who'd barely spoken before now shared tomato seedlings and recipes. Ironically, property values climbed 15% after Brenda's removal. Turns out buyers liked communities known for defeating corruption. Restitution checks trickled in monthly, covering debts, vacations, and college savings. Watching neighbors use recovered funds to breathe again felt like justice with interest. Meanwhile, Brenda's reality was bleak. According to Clara, she worked in prison laundry for 60 cents an hour, sharing a cell with women who'd committed real crimes. Our saga caught the attention of a group of film students, who turned it into a documentary, Garage Door Justice, An American Story. It won a regional festival and got national distribution. The appearance fees? I donated them to a scholarship fund for automotive education, ironically funded by Brenda's restitution payments. Seeing Diego Martinez, Linda's nephew, graduate with a degree in automotive technology using that scholarship was worth more than any car trophy I'd ever earned. Brenda had tried to weaponize my passion against me, and instead it became the foundation for future mechanics. On the personal front, Sarah and I began dating carefully, slowly. Turns out forensic accountants and grease monkeys have more in common than expected. And the Camaro? She became famous, magazines dubbed her the car that defeated an HOA Karen. Offers to buy poured in, but some things aren't for sale. Every Sunday, I took her to car shows, often bringing along neighborhood kids eager to learn. Teaching Carlos Jr. how to set valve clearances, watching pride light up his dad's face, that was worth more than money. The Camaro wasn't just a car anymore. She was a symbol. Our case set precedent, cited in HOA fraud lawsuits across 3 states. Mike spoke at conferences about fiduciary duty violations. Our documentation methods became teaching material for community organizing workshops. The state even passed the Willowbrook Act, requiring financial audits for all HOAs with budgets over $50,000. The governor signed the bill into law with cameras flashing, but the real victory was knowing other neighborhoods wouldn't suffer as we had. Emails poured in from across the country, veterans, single moms, retirees, people inspired by our story, ready to fight back in their own communities. Now, block parties were monthly traditions, filled with food, laughter, and genuine connection. Kids ran free, adults swapped grilling tips and repair advice. As I sat in my garage one evening, the smell of Linda's baking drifting in, Tom's lawnmower humming, I thought, this is what neighborhoods are supposed to be, people choosing to lift each other up, not tear each other down. As weeks turned into months, our story spread like wildfire online. HOA reform forums shared our strategy guides. Videos about Brenda's downfall racked up hundreds of thousands of views. What began as a nightmare had become a blueprint for resistance. One afternoon, I received an email from a veteran in Phoenix. His HOA president was targeting him for parking his service van in his driveway. "Your story gave me the courage to fight back," he wrote. That message hit me harder than anything, knowing our struggle was helping strangers stand tall. I started consulting pro bono, sharing tactics with other communities. Documentation, coalition building, incident reports, our playbook became their lifeline. Neighbors in different states were toppling petty tyrants with the same tools we used. Justice had gone viral. Back home, Willowbrook kept thriving. The restitution checks finally wrapped up, every household made whole. Watching neighbors plan vacations, pay off debt, and breathe again was like seeing color return to a faded painting. Even better, trust had been rebuilt. Kids played without parents glancing nervously toward Brenda's house. Block parties turned into traditions. Tom joked that we were living proof that barbecue could heal anything. The smell of ribs and laughter echoing down the street was proof enough. The Camaro, meanwhile, gained legendary status. At car shows, people pointed and whispered, "That's the HOA Camaro." She wasn't just a vehicle anymore, she was a piece of American folklore. I couldn't sell her if I wanted to. Too many memories, too much meaning. One Sunday, a teenager named Marcus Jr., no relation, asked if he could sit behind the wheel. His hands trembled as he touched the steering wheel. "This feels like power," he whispered. I grinned. "It's more than horsepower. It's proof you don't let anyone take what's yours." The legal world didn't ignore our case either. Mike was invited to panels where he explained how HOAs could be held accountable. He relished dismantling crooked boards in front of packed audiences. Sarah's audit methods became textbook examples in accounting classes. Even lawmakers paid attention. The Willowbrook Act gained national attention, sparking similar bills in other states. For once, politicians were learning from ordinary people instead of the other way around. That felt like real progress. Meanwhile, Brenda faded into obscurity behind prison walls. Word filtered back occasionally through Clara, who still felt pangs of guilt. Laundry detail. Scraping by on pennies. Sharing a cell with hardened criminals. The Queen of Willowbrook reduced to anonymity. Her fall was poetic, but I didn't celebrate her suffering. The victory wasn't her misery, it was our freedom. We weren't living under fear anymore. And that mattered more than anything. The scholarship fund kept growing, fueled by her restitution payments. 3 kids from our neighborhood were already pursuing automotive programs. Watching them chase dreams reminded me why I loved turning wrenches in the first place. Sarah and I grew closer. Coffee turned into dinners, dinners into weekends together. We built something real, forged in fire. Brenda had tried to destroy me, but instead she'd introduced me to someone who understood me better than anyone. One evening, I sat in my garage with Sarah beside me, the Camaro gleaming under soft lights. I thought back to the night Brenda called the police on me for opening my own garage door. We'd come a long way since then. I hit record on my phone camera. "Share your HOA nightmare stories in the comments," I said. "Document everything. You never know who might be inspired by your fight." The video went live, part of a new series we started together, because Brenda's story wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of showing that ordinary people could stand up and win. The channel began to grow faster than I expected. Each new story drew more people who'd lived through similar nightmares. HOA horror tales poured into my inbox daily, each one proof that Brenda wasn't an isolated case. She was part of a much larger problem. Some emails were heartbreaking. A retired couple fined for having their granddaughter's toys in the yard. A veteran cited for flying the wrong size flag. Families bullied into selling their homes. I realized we weren't just telling stories, we were giving people a voice. Every upload became a rallying point. Viewers shared their own battles in the comments, building an online coalition as strong as the one in our neighborhood. Document everything wasn't just advice anymore, it was a movement. The Camaro sat proudly in the garage, polished and gleaming, but now she was more than a car. She was a reminder that standing up matters. Every time I fired up her engine, that deep rumble wasn't just horsepower, it was defiance. I still drove her to shows, but instead of going alone, I brought kids from the neighborhood. I taught them how engines breathed, how metal came alive under patient hands. Their wide eyes reminded me of myself at their age, watching my dad work. One Sunday, Carlos Jr. asked, "Mr. Rodriguez, do you think I could build a car like this one day?" I smiled. "Not only can you, kid, you'll build one even better." Hope lit up his face brighter than any chrome. Meanwhile, Willowbrook flourished under its new board. Transparency and fairness weren't just promises, they became routine. For the first time, people trusted their HOA. And the strangest thing? Instead of division, there was unity. The community garden behind the clubhouse bloomed. Families who'd barely exchanged hellos before now swapped recipes, gardening tips, and laughter. It turned out Brenda had been right about one thing: neighborhoods do reflect their leadership. Just not the way she imagined. Our coalition didn't disband after Brenda's downfall. We stayed active, reviewing bylaws, ensuring fairness, protecting against future abuse. The resistance had transformed into stewardship. We weren't just defending anymore, we were building. Even financially, the neighborhood bounced back. Property values rose steadily, families reinvested, and for the first time, Willowbrook Estates was seen as a desirable place to live, not a cautionary tale. Buyers wanted to join a community that had stared down corruption and won. National media picked up our story again, this time not as scandal but as a success. Neighborhood restores trust after HOA tyranny, one headline read. It felt surreal seeing our names in print, not as victims, but as examples. The state invited Mike to testify about HOA reform. Sarah's audit system became a model adopted in other associations. Tom spoke on panels about community unity. Even Linda got recognition for her grassroots organizing. Ordinary people turned experts, all thanks to one neighbor who overplayed her hand. Brenda, meanwhile, faded deeper into prison obscurity. The last I heard, she'd been transferred to another facility after fights with inmates. Whatever empire she thought she had built was gone, reduced to memories and mugshots. But for us, life had never been richer. Kids laughing in yards. Neighbors trading tools instead of complaints. Monthly cookouts that felt like family reunions. The weight that had once smothered Willowbrook was gone, replaced by a spirit that felt unbreakable. And as I sat on my porch one evening, sipping coffee, the Camaro glinting under the setting sun, I realized something simple but powerful: Brenda had tried to break us apart. Instead, she welded us together. Sometimes, the worst storms forged the strongest steel. 6 months after Brenda's sentencing, the transformation of Willowbrook felt complete. What once was a tense, rule-bound neighborhood now pulsed with life. The oppressive silence of fear had been replaced by the buzz of lawnmowers, kids' laughter, and neighbors chatting freely in driveways. The scholarship fund kept growing, and each time a student received support, it felt like poetic justice. Brenda's stolen money, once a symbol of greed, was now fueling opportunity. Watching young people step into futures she tried to deny others was sweeter than any court verdict. At one ceremony, I handed Diego Martinez his scholarship certificate. His family beamed with pride, tears shining in their eyes. "Make us proud, kid," I told him. "Show the world what hard work can do." That moment felt better than restoring any car. Meanwhile, our neighborhood documentary Garage Door Justice gained national traction. Critics praised it as a story of resilience in the face of suburban tyranny. Seeing our fight replayed on screen was surreal, but also powerful. It meant other communities knew they weren't alone. I'd never imagined I'd be part of something bigger than myself. A mechanic, a car, and a nightmare neighbor had snowballed into a movement. Conferences, interviews, panels. It wasn't fame I wanted, but if sharing our story helped others, I'd do it gladly. Sarah stayed by my side through it all. What started with late-night strategy sessions over coffee had grown into something steady and real. She grounded me, and I gave her the simplicity she'd been craving. In each other, we found balance. Tom often joked that Brenda had unintentionally become our matchmaker. "Guess she wasn't all bad," he'd laugh. Sarah would roll her eyes, but I'd catch her smiling when he wasn't looking. Even in destruction, Brenda had sparked creation. The Camaro continued to symbolize our journey. At shows, people crowded around, not just to admire the gleaming Hugger orange paint but to hear the story. "That car beat an HOA dictator," folks whispered. And in a way, they were right. I never accepted offers to sell her. Money couldn't buy what she represented. She was freedom, persistence, and proof that ordinary people could fight back against power gone wrong. Every mile I drove was a victory lap. One evening, after a long day, Sarah and I sat on the hood under a blanket of stars. "Do you ever think about how different life would be if Brenda had just left you alone?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "All the time. But then we wouldn't have this." The neighborhood gatherings became tradition. Each month, more families attended, new memories formed, and the scars Brenda left faded a little more. Music, food, laughter, it was what suburbia was supposed to be before fear twisted it. Even the state's media began to paint Willowbrook as a model community. Articles described us as the neighborhood that turned tyranny into unity. It was flattering, but what mattered most was that we could finally live in peace. Neighbors who once barely waved now borrowed tools, traded recipes, and supported each other during tough times. The walls between us, ones Brenda had strengthened with fear, were gone. In their place was connection. I often thought of my grandfather's words, "Machines are just steel and oil. What matters is the people you build with." Back then, I thought he was talking about cars. Now I knew he meant life. As I stood in my garage one evening, tools neatly hung, Camaro gleaming, Sarah laughing inside with neighbors, I realized something simple: Brenda thought she could control us. Instead, she gave us freedom. And freedom, once found, doesn't fade. The first anniversary of Brenda's arrest arrived quietly, yet the neighborhood marked it with a block party. Grills smoked, kids dashed through sprinklers, and the air buzzed with music and laughter. It wasn't a celebration of her downfall, it was a celebration of what we had built since. Tom raised his glass midway through. "To community," he said. "To standing up, to looking out for each other, and to never letting fear rule us again." The cheer that followed wasn't just noise, it was a promise. That night, Sarah and I walked home under the soft glow of porch lights. "Do you think people will remember Brenda in 10 years?" she asked. I shook my head. "They'll remember what came after. The garden. The laughter. The freedom. That's the legacy." In many ways, Brenda had become irrelevant. The real story was us, the neighbors who refused to bend, who turned a nightmare into strength. That was what would endure long after her name faded from memory. The Camaro still sat proudly in the garage, but she wasn't just mine anymore. She belonged to all of Willowbrook, a symbol parked on 4 wheels. Every time I opened that garage door, I remembered the night Brenda tried to weaponize it against me, and I smiled. I drove her less these days, saving her for moments that mattered. Car shows with the kids. Fundraisers for scholarships. Parades that celebrated community resilience. She had become a rolling monument to perseverance. One morning, a letter arrived from a neighborhood 3 states over. Enclosed was a photo of their HOA president being escorted away in handcuffs. Scrawled across the back, "We used your playbook. Thank you." My chest tightened with pride. Our fight had ripple effects we couldn't even measure. Life moved forward. Neighbors built additions, kids grew taller, and Willowbrook thrived. The scars of Brenda's reign remained faint reminders, but they no longer hurt. Instead, they reminded us of how far we had come. Sarah and I settled into a rhythm, simple, steady, fulfilling. She teased me for spending too much time in the garage, I teased her for turning every budget meeting into an audit seminar. Somehow, it worked. Mike often joked that we'd written the HOA survival guide without meaning to. Maybe one day we would publish it. But for now, living it was enough. At the second annual neighborhood barbecue, Linda hung a handmade banner across the clubhouse entrance, "Stronger Together." It wasn't fancy, but as the crowd gathered beneath it, I realized no slogan had ever felt truer. Neighbors brought dishes, kids organized games, and even former skeptics joined in. What once was a divided street was now a family. And in that unity, Brenda's shadow finally disappeared for good. As twilight fell, I stood by the Camaro, watching the glow of string lights dance across polished paint. Tom came over, beer in hand. "Think Brenda's watching this from her cell," he joked. I chuckled. "If she is, I hope she realizes she lost more than power, she lost a community." The night wound down with music fading and laughter echoing into the dark. I locked the garage, Sarah slipping her hand into mine. "We made it," she whispered. And she was right, we had. Looking back, Brenda thought she was fighting for control. But what she really did was give us strength, unity, and purpose. She tried to break us, and instead she built us. And that's the final truth, the community she tried to destroy became stronger than she could ever imagine.